Carolyn. It's always such a pleasure to see you, to be with you, to be around your energy. So welcome.
Yay!
Yeah. Yay!
Thanks for having me, you guys. It's so good to see you.
Good to see you too. Well, let's just jump right in. Tell us about...
Say it again.
What?
You said jump right in again. You always say that. You have to come up with some new material.
Let's hop in. Let's spring into the conversation.
Yeah, sure.
More creative. Tell us your story. Tell us what you're up to. Tell us, you have such an inspiring story. I've heard it multiple times at multiple different conferences where we've had the pleasure of being together. Your story is really amazing. So I'd like to give our audience a little taste of you.
Her story is also in her book.
And it's also, that's right, it's in her book. Tell us about your book and the lessons that the one big lesson that I love so much from Fierce. But would you mind just start talking, girl?
Yeah.
Background.
Yeah, I really appreciate you guys having me on and giving me the opportunity to share a topic that is real and is not uncommon, but is also maybe not talked about as much. And so I'm excited to be here to share with your audience the things that sometimes aren't talked about.
Yeah.
And in how a person's perception and definition of what love is can be set up into the decisions and relationships that are made. And so with my upbringing, I was raised, I was adopted about 5 days old. And my mother and father, they tried to have a child and had about 17 miscarriages. Wow. And so I was adopted and my dad worked on the road. So he was gone for most of my childhood, and my mother struggled with mental health challenges. And she continued to try to get pregnant after my adoption with no avail for several years. But she still struggled. Mm-hmm. And at a young age, I was 4 years old, is when my neighbor, when we lived in California, started to be very friendly and sexually molested me for about 2 years. And my mom, she was around, but she was also just very kind of lost in her own world. And I was abused, and really that's where my definition of what love looked like began, about 4 years old. Wow. We moved, and I kept that secret, and harboring secrets started then. And that abuse occurred again with people who were invited into my home. While again, my mom was just not in a good place. Mm-hmm. So growing up, I was abused by both men and women. In thinking about how your definition of what self-worth and self-love equates as you're growing and kind of learning the world. From there, my decisions around what that looked like moved into a teenage years. Mm-hmm. Now, I grew up taking care of my mom, but then also my sister came along. And my sister, born to my parents about when I was about 9. And that was the tipping point for my mother. She tipped over the edge in her mental health. And I basically raised my little sister while my mom was just not in a good place. So raising my little sister, protecting her from these people who were in and out of our home, and then just continually just being that, the tough one kind of. And so
the protector, right? You were protecting her.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And then it continued on as we grew, just like children do. We grow, we adapt, we overcome in some ways. I got into teenage years and I found my very first boyfriend. He was a wonderful kid, and I put a lot of weight on him in that I gave him the responsibility of rescuing me from my situation, which is unfair with your first love, right? But we all kind of think when you first have your first love, you think, oh man, this is going to be forever.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. My prince has arrived.
Right. And so I put a lot of pressure on him, and we broke up. And when we broke up, it was devastating. Devastating not only because I had a mixed or a skewed perception of what a relationship should be. I had a skewed perception of what love was, and I had a skewed perception of my worth.
Can you break down each one of those a little bit? Like, what was your perception of what love was supposed to be? What was this relationship supposed to look like? And your self-worth, like, tell us a little bit about what that would look like back then.
So growing up in an environment of sexual abuse and physical abuse, along with a mother who struggled ups and downs and all arounds with her mental health, some days it was really great. She would say that she loved me and that it was fun. We'd go on little adventures together. And then some days it was really, really bad, where she would remind me I'm adopted, I cost $10,000, I need to earn my keep. We grew up in an environment of hoarding, so we had cockroaches, mice, and then just piles of crap. I never was allowed to have friends over because it was, they weren't allowed in the house because of you could see the addiction, and couldn't hide it. And so, yeah, there were some days were just wonderful, and I felt, that I was loved. And then there's the Hyde side of it, where the Jekyll and Hyde side, where it's horrible, and you fear the physical abuse. So that kind of curates what you think as a teenager is what should be love, or what could be love. It's either pulled from the TV because you're trying to pull in some fairy tale scenario. And then there's the other half of your thinking that maybe the person that does love you should probably abuse you too, because that's love.
Right. You're expecting those big ups and downs and the big swings and all the drama and the as you say, and your abuse was not just physical. I mean, it was sexual, it was mental, it was like you got the trifecta.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so, and then on top of raising my mother as well.
Right.
So, yeah, it's a very skewed perception of, and then there's also the manipulation portion as well. And so, yeah, it's very confusing. And when my boyfriend and I broke up, it was devastating in that I didn't know what else there was. I lived in this environment that basically told me that I wasn't worthy. And then breaking up with my boyfriend in that very first hit of heartbreak, I didn't want to live. And so I found myself in the middle of an emergency room with providers trying to pump 25 pills out of my stomach, sleeping pills, to try and save my life.
Wow.
And when I returned from the emergency room, they put you on a 72-hour hold when you try to take your life. Thankfully, I was not successful.
Yeah,
and
thankfully.
They sent me home.
Right back to the same place where it all started.
Exactly. And there was my little sister, and she was so angry with me, rightfully so. And I promised her that I'd never ever leave again, because I realized that I was her protector, and that I was her shining light, and that I needed to be there for her. And I promised her I'd never leave again, but it didn't stop the hurt and the continuing, it wasn't was a blip in the road, but it wasn't a way of healing. And so my life continued on, and I continued to protect my sister, and I ran right into the arms of another person who reflected my self-worth, and I became pregnant and married.
When you say reflected your self-worth, I know what you're talking about, but can you be more specific?
Yes. So I ran right into this relationship, and this person basically was the female version of my mother. And it was oh, you're so great. Hold on, what are you doing? Are you lying? Are you
the female version or the male version?
I'm sorry, the male version of my mother.
Okay, I thought.
And so yes, sorry.
No,
the male version, male. Let's be clear. Let's be clear.
Yeah, I was like, how'd you get pregnant with a girlfriend?
Immaculate conception.
Boom.
And he was quite charming, but then monitored my time, and then told me how wonderful I was, but then monitored my food. And I was in a constant, he would keep me up all night in order to keep me exhausted so that I wouldn't be successful at work or at school. And it was very, very verbally abusive, and kept me on a constant string. So he would monitor my paycheck, would monitor my time, would monitor and remove my friends from, basically remove them from our lives, convincing me that they were all against us and our love, and that he loved me so much that no one could love me as much as he did. So they were jealous.
Yeah. And these are some of the things that sometimes are happening in relationships, and people aren't realizing that this is abuse. We talk about physical abuse is very easy to see. Sexual abuse is pretty easy to see and understand. The mental abuse, like verbally abuse, you can kind of understand, but this is like there's a level of mental and emotional manipulation that's really abusive when someone's constantly monitoring you and you have no freedoms. And I mean, tell us how you saw that as abuse and then started to make changes, because you ended up leaving him. But I mean, I know that was a big, tell us and you've kind of given us a taste, but like, what are the signs that, that became clear to you, like, I need to get out of this relationship? Because we talk a lot on this podcast about why to stay and how to stay. What we don't talk about is why to go and when to go. When is the the battling, when does that become abusive? Like, how can you tell? And because we, even before we got on this podcast, a lot of people are in abusive relationships and just don't know that they're being abused.
Right. It was hard to see. Mm-hmm. But when my daughter was born, I remember specifically, I was extremely exhausted. I had been up all night. She was a colicky baby, had been screaming for 2 months, and I was at the end of my rope and I didn't know what to do. And I remember at 2 months, I was about 4 a.m, I was rocking her, and I was praying. She's screaming at the top of her lungs, and I was praying, please, someone send me a sign. Send me a sign, because I don't know how much I can handle. And in that moment, she stopped crying, and she looked in my eyes as if she's looking into my soul, telling me that she was my sign. And so
that story always gives me chills.
It was I remember it like it was yesterday, and in that moment it was an integral moment, because that's when I realized what unconditional love was. And I also realized what it wasn't. love is not unending self-sacrifice and suffering. And
Amen.
So,
Amen. That is not what it is.
and I had created this perception of what I thought it was. And I thought that he loved me because he would monitor my time, because he wanted to be with me. And I thought that he loved me because he monitored my friends and who I was talking to and where I was. I couldn't even go to the bathroom by myself. And at that point, I questioned it a bit, but at the same time, he always convinced me that he loved me so much, just needed to be with me.
Mm-hmm.
And he convinced me that my friends, they are just so jealous of what we have. They could never understand the relationship we have. And he could convince me that, nobody really understands me. I have a different way of thinking. So that's why I don't have any friends. And that's why people don't like to hang out with me, because I have social anxiety. And that's a bullshit lie.
Yeah, that is a bullshit lie.
And so it was incremental. I mean, no one hops into a relationship, with a sale sign saying, hey, come date me. I will make you feel like crap, treat you like hell, and make sure that you feel like you're worth nothing. Like, that's not a sales pitch.
Right.
So
That's not that isn't how the relationship starts, right?
It doesn't start that way.
It's kind of like alcoholism, right? You start drinking and then it starts to progress, and pretty soon things can get out of control. I think it's the same sort of cycle, right? It starts out great. You're having so much fun, and suddenly you're like, oh God.
Yeah, what happened? And you end up in the middle of something, and it's kind of like it just eases in, and you don't quite realize it until you take a clear look around. And that's the hard place to get to, is being able to have a clear look. Because I'm married, I have a child, and the worst thing that I could think of that would be so very embarrassing would be to get a divorce.
Right.
And, or to leave, because if I just love him more, he'd treat me better. And if I just did what he asked me to do, then he wouldn't be so mean to me, or he'd speak kinder to me. If I could just I'll try again tomorrow. Well, I didn't quite make the ground beef and the spaghetti exactly the way he liked it, which is what made him upset. So I'll try again tomorrow. Or, normally the commute home takes me about 15 minutes. There was construction, so it took me about 18 minutes. It's not his fault he's upset. I'll try harder tomorrow.
Right. Not recognizing that when people are upset with you, it almost sometimes it has something to do with you, but usually it has more to do with the person who's getting angry.
Yes.
Which is very hard to learn.
It's hard to learn because you think, well, I must have done something wrong. I'll just love him more. People don't understand him. He had a hard upbringing, and that's why he gets so upset.
Right.
And I'm the only one that can help. I'm the only one that can help him. Mm-hmm. And if I could just be a little bit more patient with him, it'll be okay. And so you tell yourself these stories, and the abuse gets worse.
Yeah.
And that's how men or women
know. That's how you know when you're doing everything in your power to make it better for you and your partner, and it's just not getting better. It's going the other direction.
It never gets better.
It never gets better.
It might get better for a little while, right? So that's the kind of, gaslighting illusion, is that, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to say that to you. And then they get you really excited, like just like as if you were falling back in love again from when you first started, and get you really excited. And then all of a sudden it's not okay. And it's a continuous roller coaster, and you're always chasing after that first date. And you're always chasing after that excitement of when they give you that positive attention and you feel so special. Mm-hmm. And so, it just gets worse. And that's how men and women actually get in very violent relationships and die, because
Right.
it's a whirlwind swirl, and you it's kind of like being pulled under water by an alligator, and you're spinning and you don't know which way's up.
Yeah. I so admire you for your courage talking about all these things that people don't want to talk about, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I know that it can't be easy to talk about these things and but you've come so far. You've come so far. So talk to us a little bit about your book and what you're teaching in your book, and how that helped you get through all the things that you've been through.
Well, yes. So thank you. I knew I had to make a change, and I didn't know how, and I was afraid. And so what I did is I took a deep breath. I identified one goal, which was escape, and I took action. I took a leap. And I didn't, just to clarify, I didn't leap for myself. I leaped for my daughter. Because sometimes you have to borrow the love that you have for another until your self-love catches up. And so I took the love that I had for my daughter and said, absolutely not. She will not live this way, and she will not be a statistic. Because when I looked into the future, I realized that statistically, if I raised her in this environment, she's going to then seek the same.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would not allow my low expectations to be inherited onto her.
Yeah.
So I fled. And we left, and I found myself standing in line at the Salvation Army waiting for food. And in that time, I looked around, bright fluorescent lights, people all around, standing in line. I just remember it so clearly, holding on to my daughter and thinking, this is not my life. I was scared. I was fearful for the unknown, scared for my life, because my husband guaranteed me that if I were to ever leave, that he would end my life, then his own, because then we would be together forever.
And that's how much he loved you.
That's right. And
If your partner's telling you that, you need to get help right now.
Exactly.
And it was even in the most endearing way.
No, it sounds very romantic. It's very romantic, Romeo and Juliet, but that's not love.
No.
That's not love. That's manipulation, and that's fear, and that's
The deep insecurity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so I knew, a restraining order was as valid as the paper it's written on. And right. I was fearful. And so I was standing there, and a very meaningful person said to me, you know what, just take it one day at a time. Because they could see the fear in my face. They could see my immobilization. I just felt, I felt paralyzed by the fear and the unknown. And standing there in that line thinking, what is this? And so I needed a plan. And in order to do that, one day at a time was just way too much to even focus on. So I broke it down into 5 minutes. I realized that you can concentrate on something and do something that you may not want to do, you're afraid to do, with it for just 5 minutes. And do that 5 minutes at a time. And so that's what I did. I broke things down 5 minutes at a time and reverse engineered where I wanted and needed to be just through that day. Mm-hmm. So soon 5 minutes turned into 10, turned into 15. And how I did this was I took the emotions that were holding me back and immobilizing me, and I used them as fuel to push me forward. So when we think about anxiety, overwhelm, PTSD, flashbacks, we think about even procrastination as an emotion, and that feeling that gets into the pit of your stomach. How can you take that feeling and tap into your sympathetic nervous system, that fight or flight mechanism? Mm-hmm. How can you tap into that and use that as fuel to push you in a self-serving direction? And so that's what I continued to do, 5 minutes at a time. And soon enough, I'd gotten through a whole day. And then I'd gotten through another day. And I've gotten through a third day. And I could look back over the past 3 days and I could say, whoa, look at what I did. I secured housing. I figured out how to patch together food pantry to food pantry and what time they were so that I had enough food. And I could figure out the bus schedule, and I could figure out how to run from the bus to my college classes to back to work to daycare and back again. And just keep continually pushing and pushing. And as I got through like a month of doing that, I could start to breathe a little bit. And I could look back and I could think, whoa, if I could do this in a month, what could I do in a year? In a year, I can get out of low-income housing. Okay, how do I do that? What's the reverse engineering of that? I need to get a job that pays cash. Started housekeeping, started babysitting, and continually hustling in which to look toward that goal of getting out of low-income housing. And then after I got out of low-income housing in just a year, then I pushed forward, like, what else could I have? What else could I go to? And so being able to start with 5 minutes, but then looking up to get a little bit of air and seeing into the future and reverse engineering it back to 5 minutes. What do I need to do in the next 5 minutes to move me toward that goal of a year? And so that is what is, in short, is my fierce method, which I still use today. I still use it, and many people use it all over the nation and the world in which to get them closer to the goal that they're after, but pushing through those emotions that hold you back.
Yeah, and I use the same your fierce method when I'm having difficult emotions. We've talked about that, I take a breath. I think, okay, how am I feeling? How can I use that to my benefit, not against myself or someone else?
Right. Take a moment.
Yep. I take a lot of timeouts.
Yes. And and we've all done this. We've all practiced this method of breathing, focusing, and taking fierce action. It's just realizing that we've done it. So we've all done it before. It's just honoring that we've done it. And that is what builds courage. And that is what builds resilience. So when we think about, okay, the kids are going wild. I just need to take a deep breath. I need to focus on how I'm going to handle the current situation. And I'm going to take action in a positive way of, okay, I'm going to take a break, or I'm going to redirect, or we're going to go get ice cream, right? Like, what are we going to do? And then just continue to practice those methods. I use it when I'm resetting in between meetings, even just simply in between meetings all day, taking a deep breath, remembering the goal what is the goal of my next meeting, and then taking the action and how I'm going to show up in that meeting and be present. I mean, it can be used in many different ways, but it all started from a place of survival. And now I use it in daily life.
Yeah, I love that too. The idea when you get overwhelmed, which happens, I think it's happening for a lot of people on a lot of different levels right now with all the things that are going on in the world, being able to say, yeah, I don't need to take this day at a time. I can take the next 5 minutes and I can just figure out what I'm going to do right now.
Or just almost shutting it off outside, because sometimes the things that are overwhelming us is just the steady onslaught of negativity that we get bombarded with from the outside, and just shutting that down and being present in your current surroundings, because that's a lot easier to get a hold of than stuff, a bunch of shit out there we don't have control over.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Very true. Well, and this, all the work that you've done and that you are doing, one of the things that we're so excited about is your new role with one of our beloved charities that we support, One Life Fully Lived. And do you want to say anything about that?
Yeah.
Give One Life a plug in your new position.
Oh yeah, it's been absolutely amazing. And so it came full circle, because One Life stands for opening the door and giving access and helping people dream, plan, and live their best lives. And the reason I say it's full circle is because it completely aligns with my fierce method.
Yes.
It completely aligns with dreaming. Like it goes all the way back to that 5 minutes. So being able to create a dream for your life, that roadmap, and then making a plan within the roadmap, and then living it, and doing that all in 5-minute increments in ways that self-serve you to get you closer to your dream. So it's a perfect alignment, and I'm so honored to take on this position to help others realize their roadmap and creating a roadmap for their lives, because we all need a roadmap for our lives. And we're continually learning, we're continually growing. And sometimes when we're on this journey, we need to be able to course correct. And that's One Life as well, because One Life has this beautiful community of self-serving or selfless humans who are there to help you course correct along the way. And again, it goes right back to going down that journey, that road of your life, and going on that journey 5 minutes at a time, taking that deep breath, focusing on where you're going next, and then doing it.
Yeah, the do part. You're definitely, your whole life is a testament to that kind of process, Carolyn. I mean, you wouldn't be where you were if you didn't dream big, plan big, do big.
and quite honestly, I learned to dream big once I was introduced to One Life. My
Yay!
dreams.
Me too, actually.
Yes.
That's very true for me as well. That's very true for me as well. One Life, I feel like One Life saved my life.
Nice.
Yes. I love that. It's so true. My dreams prior were very survival oriented. And then once I met One Life, it was thriving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you are.
Yeah.
You're doing it, girl. Woo, woo.
Yes. Yes. It's been wonderful. It's been a wonderful journey.
Yeah. I want to circle back around to getting out of relationships. And what advice do you have for people who might be listening to this thinking, I wonder, I think I might be in an abusive relationship. You know, I've been weathering this storm for a while and I can't seem to figure out how to get out. Maybe they're afraid. Maybe they don't know what to do. What kind of advice do you have for them?
I would say the most difficult part for me was realizing that I was actually in an abusive relationship. And when you look around, and what I had done is I had alienated all my friends. So I didn't really have anyone. I didn't have anyone to really bounce it off of. So I would recommend first reading my book.
Yes.
Fierce.
Tell us where they can find it. Yep.
It's on Amazon. It's called Fierce, Transforming from Adversity, 5 minutes at a time. Read the book. And when reading the book, if the message resonates with you, then it's time to take a deeper dive in your situation. Mm-hmm. I have over 30 pages worth of references and resources in the back, which help to guide where to go and what to do and how to make a plan. But really the first step is really admittance and acceptance of the situation that you may be in. And a sad thing that happens with many people in relationships is that they downplay what's really going on.
Yeah.
Oh, well, you know, he really didn't mean to say that, or she didn't really, she was just upset. You know, downplaying what's going on. So read the book and listen to what comes up for you. Mm-hmm. And then you can also, I would download on my website at carolyncolleen.com, I would download the Fierce Method. That's where I could walk you through how to practice the Fierce Method 5 minutes at a time. And with just simply taking that time for yourself, you're just taking How long did it take? Just a deep breath and getting present. That will help clear the air and clear your mind to be able to concentrate, and just simply giving yourself that space to think and reflect.
Instead
Just
of
those
being
5
so
minutes.
reactive, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that is where you're going to be able to start to see and maybe admit what's happening in your situation. And that's where I started.
Carolyn, thank you so much for sharing all your wisdom. Will you just selflessly plug everywhere that you are, how people could get a hold of you? Are you working one-on-one with people these days, or what? Are you coaching at all, or are you?
Yes, I coach. I have a wait list for coaching, but at CarolynColleen.com, you can get more information into all the different things that I'm up to. I have my course, which my fierce network. So coming into a group of fierce men and women who are continually uplifting each other and practicing the fierce method. And so it's fierce network, and that's where I bring in people to share what their gifts are, and then just another way to connect with other people who are practicing fierce. And then I have my freebie on my website. There's my book, speaking, coaching, facilitating, all of those things.
Perfect. And it's CarolynColleen.com.
Yes.
Yep. Great.
It'll be in the show notes. We can spell it too if we want, in case people are super lazy and don't want to go to the show notes.
Go ahead.
CAROLYN. I was going to say that.
Oh, I was helping.
I'm
helping.
See? So the regular spelling of Carolyn, and then, well, actually, there's 2 spellings. It's the LYN version, and then COLLEEN.com.
That's right.
Ta-da. Carolyn, thank you so much for sharing all of your experiences and your beautiful self and your wisdom and your light with us and with our audience.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, you guys. Could hang out all day.
It's a
Thank
special
you.
gift.